Welcome to Artistic Adventures. We're going to be ending our Live Doll Vampire project today. We're going to work on a crown and a little bat necklace. Here we go. All right, so here's where we left it last time. We have our doll with her hair. I had just put it up with this pipe cleaner so I could get it out of the way. And we're going to make a crown. So I'm going to use this other Live doll that I received from my friend Jackie. And she'll be my model so we don't mess up the nice alpaca fiber. So I'm just going to take a piece of aluminum foil and fold it a few times to give it a little bit of strength, about fold it over about 4 times, I guess. And then I'm going to measure around the head. And I'm using this doll with the wig cap on. These Live dolls have wig caps, and it makes their head just a little bit bigger than the doll that I'm using, that I put alpaca fiber on, because when you cook polymer clay, it does actually shrink a little bit. So I'm going to make this one on this doll's head so it'll be just a little bit bigger, and I'll make sure that I get it big enough because I can always cut it down. So what I'm doing is folding the aluminum foil in the back where they meet so I know how big the area around the head is. And I'm going to use that kind of as a guide, and I'm also going to use it to cook the crown portion on so that it keeps its shape. So I'm going to set that aside right there for a minute and get out some black Primo polymer clay. You can use any kind that you want. I just happen to have this on hand and I like it, so that's what I'm going to use. And I'm going to make a band, and then I'm going to attach some things to it. So the first thing I'm going to do is roll it out, and I want to make sure that your surface that you're rolling it out on is nice and clean, because it will pick up everything that you're rolling. So I did try to clean this off prior to doing this so I didn't get all the glitter and feathers and alpaca fiber that I've been working on with this doll. And I'm just using this little tool that I've purchased. It's for polymer clay to roll it out. You can use whatever you like that's round, or if you have a pasta maker, you can use that. That tends to I like the pasta maker because it makes sure that the thickness is the same for the piece. Right now I'm measuring the piece that I've rolled out based on the length around the head, and I'm going to cut out a piece of that. That'll be the strap of the crown. This will be the basis of the crown, and just using my little clay cutter there. I cut an extra piece because I wasn't sure if I was going to need another piece to make it stronger. I ended up not using the extra piece for that. I ended up using it for the pieces that I attached, so didn't really quite sure until I put it around here how I was going to do it. But I think at this point I was pretty sure I could make the mold hold when I cooked it. So I'm propping it up on this bottle that's about the same size around, just to help it keep its shape while I'm working on it. And just sort of let that rest there while I'm making the pieces that I'm going to attach to the crown. So my vision for the crown is, we have this doll, and she has sort of a, not an evil expression at all, sort of a neutral expression that could go either way. And we were talking about how that's going to make her be sort of non-threatening to her victims, that she's gonna, take their blood. So just to add an element to the costume that is a little more dramatic and maybe dark, I wanted the attachments that I'm going to put on the crown to sort of look like daggers, sort of that shape. And I'm going to make them in graduating sizes to apply. I'm going to have one in the center that's longer, and then I'll have 2 more on either side that are graduated in size. And then I ended up having 2 more that I put on afterwards because I wanted something that would hang down as well as point up. And I'll show you those a little later on in the video. So right now I'm just cutting these out to make sure that I have the right sizes and that they're symmetrical of the 5 pieces that I'm going to use to place on the crown. And then I'm going to start with the longest one that's going to be in the middle and start carving out my pseudo dagger design. And basically it'll be I'd say the upper part of a dagger. So like the upper part of the hilt and the blade is what I'm envisioning. So I'm just going to use my X-Acto knife. It's kind of hard to do this and show it to you on the camera too, but sort of made a little point on this end, and that'd be sort of like where the top of the hilt would be. And then I'm going to make the top part a longer point, if that makes sense. And that's more like how the blade of the dagger would be. So I'm just trimming those edges off to make the point. And I'm going to make an indentation that would sort of be where the hilt would come in on a dagger. And then I wanted to also do something to the top of it to sort of make an indent. And I'll show you how I did this. How I did that. Right now I'm just sort of trimming it up. For those of you who asked, I did have surgery this past week on my knee, and the first day was not too bad because they had given me a steroid shot, but then the days after that have been much harder, a little bit more pain and stiffness, and so I'm having a little trouble getting around, but I was able to at least sit down to film the rest of this and get it up for you guys. Still having a lot of trouble walking and some pain issues, but I'm keeping ice on it, and hopefully it will continue to improve. And I have to say, you know, if it gets rid of the pain that I had before I had the surgery, it'll be worth it. But you have to get through these times. So I appreciate the thoughts and kind words that you all sent, and hopefully we'll be getting through this fairly quickly and move on next week to better times. So anyway, this is the indentation that I'm making to make the dagger of the hilt. So it's sort of like the top part of the dagger. I hope that makes sense. And then the pointed top is the blade. And I want to have a decoration on the bottom of this, sort of reminiscent of a dagger that would have a jewel embedded in the hilt. So I'm going to take a small piece of the clay, and I'm going to roll that up to put down at the bottom. And once I have this clay cooked, I can put my crystal in it. I'm going to use some ruby colored crystals. So I'm just making that little round dot there, and then I'm going to use a dot making tool to sort of hollow it out a little bit in the center, and that's where I'll place the crystal on the inside. So I'm just sort of making that, rubbing that around in a circle to open up the center of that round piece of clay that I put in there. So that's going to be the centerpiece. It's the tallest one, and I'm going to do now is to use my metal tool that I have. I love this tool. It's my favorite clay making tool. It's pointed on one end, and then this end has a sort of scoop that's rounded. And I'm going to use that to make an indentation, sort of like how daggers are a little bit indented, you know. Maybe not exactly like this, but I just wanted it to have some dimension to it, some contour. And this is the perfect tool to do that. Just trying to make it look the same on both sides and not press down too far and go all the way through the clay. I want to do that. So once we get this part done, then I'm just going to make the other 4 pieces in a very similar shape, just they won't be as tall. And I'll want this to sort of look like a little bit darker element to her costume, you know, with the dagger look than we've done so far. You know, the glitter of the bustier I like because it matches the glitter in her eyes, and you can't see that as well on the video, but it really does look great together. I wish you guys could see it in person. You can tell just a little bit sometimes with the light right, but it really does match her eyes well, and and show off that sort of wild glitter of red in her eyes. And I like the cloak and the dress as well. I think they turned out well for our vampire queen. So now I'm just going to move on to the other pieces of this project for the crown, and doing exactly the same thing that I did for the long piece. So I don't know if you guys have got any plans for Halloween. I think we're going to do the trunk or treating again at church that we did last year, where we go and dress up the back of the car, and everybody, pulls into the church parking lot. And the neighborhood kids really like it. It's a little bit of a underprivileged area, and it's a safe place for them to go. And since the church has it every year, they've kind of come to depend on it. And it's really a nice outing. We used to go about 5:30 and stay till 6:30. Oh no, I think we get there at 5 and we stay till 6:30 usually, till it starts to get dark, and have a lot of kids come out. Last year we were vampires, and this year we're going to be spiders. So we have spider costume, and we're going to dress up the back of the car with spider webs and a huge spider. And then we also have spider costumes to wear, and also our dogs have spider costumes to wear. I'll try to get some pictures, and maybe I can put them up in the next video. But that should be fun. I don't know what you guys are doing. Leave me a message below and let me know what your Halloween costume is. I wonder how many people are being vampires this year. I think vampires are always popular. I know that they were super popular during the Twilight era, but maybe they're not so much anymore. All right, I'm getting ready to bake this, and I just placed this down. And if you'll notice, I overlapped it a little bit in the back because I know I'm going to be able to overlap it and glue it when I put it on her. And when you overlap it and cook it, it sort of takes on that shape, and it's a little bit easier. If you don't overlap it, then you kind of have to really hold it when you glue it to make sure that it's glued before it's dried before you let go. This way, it's in that shape already, and it's much easier to glue. Now, I'm not sure exactly how much I'll overlap it, but at least it will already have that shape somewhat. Now, I'm using my tool to scoop up these pieces so I don't disturb the shape. That's the best way to get something up off of the table after you've shaped it on the table. If you try to pick it up with your fingers, a lot of times you'll make the shape, you'll screw up the shape. So as I said, I did actually use that little piece that I have there, and I cut some pieces that are going to hang down. But I think I cut those off camera because I kind of got confused about what I was doing there for a minute. I think I still have the effects of the anesthesia going a little bit. It certainly made my mouth dry. I don't know if you can tell, but like my throat is so dry, I'm having a hard time talking. And it sounds like I'm constantly trying to swallow. But anyway, all right, so I went ahead and cooked these, and now I'm just removing the aluminum foil from the back of the crown part that I rolled out, and it doesn't stick too much. Comes off pretty easily, and that worked really well. And then there's my little pieces that I cooked, and I did actually cut those other two pieces off camera. So now what I want to do is I'm going to do some carving of this piece to give it some more shape, and to also be more reminiscent of the little dagger design. So you see it does overlap there. The part that overlaps is kind of just a blob, so I'm going to cut it into a point, and that'll match the design of the little daggers that I've cut to decorate the crown with. So I'm just using scissors. You can use scissors on polymer clay after you've done it. Cut that into a point. And that's going to be the part that I'll overlap onto the back. So you see it's not hard, it's just, you don't want to bend it too much or you'll break it, but it's fairly easy to manipulate like this when it's this thin, even though it's cooked. Alright, so I measured it around the doll's head, so now this should be perfect so that I can fit it down over her hair and it'll fit and not fall down on her face or not be too small so that it won't fit over. So I'm going to let that dry, and then I'm going to come back after while that's drying and put the ruby crystals into the pieces. And I have graduated sizes. The large one in the center will have a larger ruby crystal than the others, and actually I think the ones beside it are even larger than the next ones. So I actually had enough that I could gradually decline the size. So I'm just putting a glob of E6000 in that little hole, and then I'm picking up the medium size crystal and putting that into that little hole that we made in the round blob that I put on the bottom. And we're going to just continue and do the same thing to all these other dagger pieces, except for the two that are going to hang down. They have the round blob but not the crystal, just to give it a little bit different look. Alright, so we're going to let those dry. Now I'm going to work on carving this crown a little bit to give it some shape. And I'm just going to use an X-Acto knife. And what I'm carving is what will be the bottom of the crown. And I'm carving it in pointed shape so that where the point comes down, that's where I'll place the daggers. So I'm going to skip ahead a little bit to where I finished this, because this is kind of boring. I'm just basically carving out round shapes out of the clay to make points along the bottom, and I'll show you where I finished it. Okay, so we're finished now. We've got all the little points carved out, and like I said, these will be pointing downwards towards her forehead. And then I'm going to put some E6000 right on top of the area that has the point, and that's where our dagger designs attachments will be. So the first one is there in the middle, and we'll put the next two on the next point down, the next size, and then I'm going to use the ones that point down right beside of it. They won't be positioned on one of the downward points. They'll be right beside of the one that I just put on, but I want them to kind of come down right before her ear, so those will be pointing downwards, and they do not have the ruby. And then I'll continue on the next downward point and put the smallest dagger with the ruby pointed upwards. And I really like how this turned out. I think it's, it's nice and gothic and a little bit spooky looking, and gives our queen a little bit of a dangerous evilness, but not enough to scare anybody away. Just enough to make them curious, I'd say, right? So there's our crown. We're going to let that dry, and there's how it looks on our Vampira doll with her costume. So I don't really do anything special to her hair other than I did curl the ends. So basically I just combed it back, and then I'm putting the crown down over it. I just liked the way that looked. I didn't think it really needed to have anything done to it on top, since the crown is sort of fancy. So that's the finished crown. And the next thing we're going to work on is going to be really challenging, but I really want her to have a necklace with a bat on it. So I'm going to have to try to carve a little teeny tiny bat out of this thin polymer clay. So I've rolled out a piece of thin polymer clay with my little roller, and now I'm going to really try to carve this bat out. It's going to be interesting because it's not easy. I mean, polymer clay I love working with it, but Making little tiny things for me is not that easy because it moves around and it sticks to things, and I always try to cut it just a little bit bigger than I think I'll need, and that way I can cut it down if I need to, or I can smoosh it if I need to. So I'm kind of doing that with this bat necklace. I'm kind of making it maybe a little bit bigger than I need. So like the ears are a little bit taller than I need. And then if I have to, I can always chop off a little piece. But if you try to cut it too small and you make a mistake, there's really nowhere for you to go. So the top part there above my hand is the ears. If you can tell, those two little ears sticking up. And then I'm cutting the wings out to the sides. And I'm just cutting little arches underneath there to make the scallops of the bat wing. And I made a little point down at the bottom that would be his little feet hanging down. And then the rest of this, I'm just trying to use my tools to make sure that the edges are smooth and that it has the shape that I want. These tools are really great. I love this one I have here. It's my favorite. I think I showed you this before. It's got this pointed end on one side, and on the other side it's got a flat sort of curved scoopy end. It's my favorite polymer clay tool, and I've had it for a long time. That and the X-Acto, I guess. And I'm using a pointy tool a little bit, so scoot you in a little bit and focus so you can kind of see how it turned out. So that's how it looks after I've finished. And we're just going to scoop it up now on my tool and put it on the aluminum foil so we can bake it. And I did bake this a little bit less than usual. It says 275 for 30 minutes for 1/4 inch, and this is way less than that. So I just baked it for about 15 minutes, and it turned out fine. So that's how it looks after I cooked it. And now what we're going to do is attach a chain. I've got this chain that's very small. It's perfect size for the doll, and it's kind of a dark bronze color and almost looks black, so it's perfect for this. So what I'm going to do is turn the little bat over, put a little glob of E6000 on the back of it. You can see how many times I keep dropping it. I dropped this thing so many times, it's so small. And then we're going to position the chain on the back so that it's pointed out in the right directions and will hang properly on the doll's neck once it's dried. So pressing it down, and of course you see it it turned immediately. I don't know what is wrong with me. So anyway, I just had to mess with it a little bit to get the chain to where it was coming up on the sides of the bat's head, and that way it'll hang properly when it's on the doll's neck. And I left the chain longer than I'll need it, so I'll have enough to work with. Once this is dry, I'll be able to attach it in the back. So I wanted to have a little extra length on it. So I think I've got it just about right there. We're going to let that dry. And now I want to attach it to the doll's neck. And the way I decided to do that was just to use some black thread, just regular sewing thread. And you want to make sure that your needle is small enough to go through the chain before you start doing this, because this was a really small chain, and the first needle that I used was not small enough, so I had to hunt through my needle stash and find one that was smaller and would go through here. I mean, you could thread it through if you had really good eyes and patience. I didn't. See, I dropped it again. I dropped that thing so many times. Okay, so I measured it to see how much of the chain I want to cut off, so that the chain will just come together in the back, and that's what I'll tie together with the thread. So I'm threading through the first side with the needle, and now through the second side, pull that through. You can see I've got it pulled through there, and I'm going to tie about 3 knots in it, just to make sure that it's tied nice and tight. Alright, so do that real quick. I'll fast forward. So I've got it tied, and then I'm going to dab a little bit of A6000 on there and saturate the knot so that it won't come undone after I trim the ends. That's always frustrating. You do something, it takes time and a little bit of expertise, and then you cut it and it falls apart. All right. But this one, I think I've got it tied nice and tight with 3 knots, and I've got the glue on it. So that should hold it. And now I can just trim the edges off. I'll just have a little blob there in the back that might look like a catch if you don't look too closely. I'd even thought about doing earrings for her, but after the necklace, I thought, no, there's no way I can make anything smaller. So she'll just have to deal with the crown. She's already got a bit going on with the crown and the necklace anyway, so I think that's plenty. Maybe somebody will buy her some ruby earrings, one of her lovers. All right, so there's a little bit closer look, and I think it turned out really cute. I'm really happy with it. Kind of looks like Batman. Like Batman. Yeah, I wouldn't want to make them for a living, but looks good on her. All right, so we're going to put her cape back on her and her crown. And then I want to be able to show you how the doll looks with everything on it. This is, as I said, the final video, so we'll be finished after this. My next video is going to be something different. I've never done a male doll before, and I did have a suggestion to do a Professor Snape doll from Harry Potter, and since he is my favorite character, I decided I might give that a try. I haven't done male dolls because I don't really like the base dolls. Like Monster High female dolls you can make look fairly good, and these Live dolls are great, but I don't like the male Monster High dolls that much, and then you get into the Ken dolls that have like a nice face structure, but they don't have joints, so I don't know. It's not as easy a choice. But this is our final look at this Liv doll, if I don't break her. And I'm going to show you some still pictures next of the costume so you can see the end of our project. Here's a full view with the light coming in the window, sort of a evening sunset coming in right before she gets ready to go out and find her victim and get some blood. And here she's admiring her crown and thinking about the evening ahead, possibly who she's going to be snaring and taking some blood from. I don't know. I always think up these stories when I make these dolls. I don't know about you guys. But anyway, I like the way she turned out. I love the little necklace. I like the crown. Love the hair. So soft and pretty. Love the way the eyes match the bustier, the glitter of the red. And it was a really nice project, especially with Halloween coming up. So as I said, my next project will be, I'll be trying to make a Professor Snape doll out of a male doll of some sort. And hope you liked this video. And if you did, please give me a thumbs up. That helps. And also, if you haven't already, please subscribe because I don't want you to miss a thing. Thanks, and bye.